Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, the arrival of Onslaught and the release of the Brave Arsenal under the stewardship of Lord Shaxx has been a great time for us as players, but as Guardians and citizens of the Lost City, things feel a lot less peachy, I guess you could say. I mean, after all, this is literally the Pyramid Fleet invasion that we've all been fearing in the lore for quite a while. The Witness has sent its forces against us, and has made a point of even trying to breach, and probably succeeding at breaching, the city walls. Thanks to the heroic efforts of the heroes of the Tower, we've stood firm for now, and none of the key territories of Earth have fallen. Whilst the protection of our ancestral heritage as Guardians is important, with the defense of Felwinter Peak and the Cosmodrome in particular being priorities, it should be noted that the major focus is still squarely on the Lost City itself. Defending a major civilian population is not an easy task, but thanks to our many great defenders and the allies we've acquired over time, we have a unique opportunity to push back against the marauding hordes of the Witness. Today we're going to look at how the city is being defended, and also at what comes after that defense, be it doom or deliverance. There is an old relic of sorts that we're going to be discussing, one that we've talked about many a time before, but one which Bungie might now tangibly be making moves towards. So, realistically, there are a few parties coming together to support our defense of the Lost City, the first and foremost of which is, of course, Lord Shaxx. Between his Red Jacks and his own tactical oversight, he's a major asset to the entire operation. It's worth remembering that this isn't the first time he's defended the Lost City with success. I don't know if I need to go over the entire story of Twilight Gap again. If you've missed that, go ahead and watch the Mountaintop video that I did years ago. That will certainly tell you the great story. But suffice to say it, he is the Guardian we want in charge of the city's overall defense. But of course, Shaxx can't be in all places at all times, so he's employed his signature tool for assistance in this regard. I mentioned them just a moment ago, the Red Jacks. At the start of every Onslaught match, you'll be deployed alongside a number of these combat frames. These frames are the Red Jacks. They are deployed in large numbers and have been programmed to be directed remotely by Lord Shaxx, or to simply follow his commands in the field. Now, to be clear, they're no Guardians, but they're still a force worth considering. Shaxx has used them for years to clear more hazardous areas of the system so that they might be used as crucible arenas. With this in mind, the Red Jacks stand out as more than just typical combat and guard frames. They are, in some instances, veterans. It's strange to hear it, but seriously, you should look at the places these things have been deployed, places that you would only consider Guardians going. Derelict ships in the Reef, Oryx's old dreadnought, ancient Martian Vex ruins, old Ishtar Academy campuses still filled with Elixni. You name it, the Red Jacks have been there, and they've cleared it out to make it safe for Guardians to compete against each other. Now, keep in mind, it is worth remembering that in the most recent iteration of Destiny 2's lore, the Red Jacks are no longer being used for this. Ever since the Season of Arrivals, the simulations have taken over, and the Crucible is now basically always being done within those simulated arenas. This is a big change, but it still does allow everybody to take part, and it means that some of the wilder locations that Guardians enter which the Red Jacks couldn't, can be used in some of these venues. Take a look at some of the maps that we've had recently, or that are coming soon. I don't think the Red Jacks are quite up to the challenge of clearing a Vex network pocket, or alternatively, a pyramid ship. So with that in mind, the Red Jacks are not being used in the same capacity that they were originally used for, but it doesn't mean that they're any less effective. They're never going to be a match for the elite forces of the Witness that you face in Onslaught, but they're still a valuable part of the operation, and given their ability to help create beachheads, they have been an important part of our defense. But of course, this entire operation is possible and has been mobilized thanks to more groups than just Lord Shaxx and his Red Jacks. There are a few other important characters who have contributed directly to the defense of the Lost City, and I think foremost amongst them is Elsie Bray, aka the Exo Stranger. For those of you who don't know, Elsie has seen this happen a lot. She has gone through dozens of failed timelines trying to find one where the light is not destroyed and where the Witness does not prevail, and in that process, she has seen the Lost City fall time and time again. There are common threads in each of those dark futures that can still be woven into our present timeline, weaknesses that were present then and were pressed upon and which failed. weaknesses that the city still holds. With that in mind, Elsie made a conscious effort, with that knowledge, to protect the lost city by helping to shore up those areas. In particular, she spent time with Lord Shaxx in the old tower, above the city, planning the defense of it from on high. You can find this moment in the lore of Elsie's rifle quite appropriately. It reads as follows. Shaxx's massive hand swallowed up his pen. He effortlessly held his map in the other. The fierce wind at the highest point of the old tower couldn't pull the paper from his hands. Elsie surveyed the horizon. The city, alive and vibrant, stretched out before her, overlaid in her memory with its corpse. She turned and pointed. There, the edge of Core West. That wall fell first in the bombardment. As Elsie turned, Shaxx shuffled around her, still clutching his map. Perimeter south? Hive sappers dug in under the wall. Botzer was overrun at the old gate. It hadn't been reinforced in years. Anchor District, Pyramid ship landed and crushed the water tower. By the time Elsie finished her recitation, Shaxx's map was dark with annotations. He set a hand on Elsie's shoulder, gentle in his movements for all his size. On my oath, these walls will not fall again. Needless to say, making a stand in a defensive posture is so much easier when you know when your enemy will strike and where. In this regard, Elsie has afforded us a unique advantage, foresight. But the defenses cannot be won by knowledge alone. Munitions, guardians, and most crucially within this equation, new weaponry is needed to push back the forces of the Witness. And it appears that the cabal of Keitel's Legion have been willing to lend a hand in this regard by allowing the Vanguard to make their own pattern of the infamous Scorpius turret, aka the Cursed Enemy. That's not in the lore, that's just T-Slape things. Anyway, a lot of firepower is actually at our disposal at this moment, and that's going to, needless to say, help the Guardians defend the Lost City. But if you're going to actually sit there and see the Lost City properly standing at the end of the day, the Guardians themselves need to be armed. That is where the major firepower comes in. And with that in mind, the Lost City's foundries come into play. Lord Shaxx has selected 12 weapons that were previously heralded as masterful pieces of weaponsmithing, or were banned or altered by the Vanguard for their power, or by himself because they were overrunning the Crucible and leaving it barren, with no Guardians willing to enter and face the likes of weapons such as the Recluse. These weapons have been released back into circulation and are known now as the Brave Arsenal. The lore seems to imply that the Brave Arsenal was created with updated designs and specifications made by the involved foundries specifically at Lord Shaxx's request. Of the 12 weapons, there are some that have clearly been directly produced by the Lost City's foundries, and some other that must have been formulated by other means. Much as they are incredibly capable, I don't think any of the Lost City foundries will have created a new version of the Forbearance. Its creation means are left as somewhat of a mystery to us. That said, the foundries involved in the processes include Omolon, Weist, and the Black Armory, with Ada 1 at its helm. Ada would work closely with Lord Shaxx in order to realize this deadly new arsenal, and to bring its potency to life. She would also return redesigned schematics for 2 of the Black Armory's more fearsome weapons so that they could be used in the Brave Arsenal as well, namely the Blast Furnace Pulse Rifle and the Hammerhead Heavy Machine Gun. Weist and Omolon would also be requested to make updated designs of their own for some of their most iconic weapons. For Weist, this would mean the return of a somewhat scaled-back version of the Recluse submachine gun, and Omolon's tried-and-true Hungjury and fearsome falling guillotine. We can actually see a little moment between Ada 1 and Lord Shaxx, which is where they convinced the representatives of the foundries to commit their resources to recreating these specific designs. It's found on the lore tab of the Blast Furnace, which picks up halfway through their conversation. But more fascinatingly for me is that it keeps an eye on the future. You see, this lore doesn't just talk about the reintroduction of those new weapons into the Brave Arsenal. It also talks about something more, something that should happen if we defeat the Witness. something which Ada is looking to control at the spearhead, but also something which she is inviting other foundries to take part with. It's a fascinating idea. Take a listen. And I'll personally produce a limited number of previously unreleased designs. An alternate version of the blast furnace, for example, Ada 1 explained. First you strong-arm us into altering our specs, the Vice Rep scoffed. And now you come begging for the very models the Vanguard rejected. They would have turned the Crucible into a graveyard, Shaxx interjected. I don't regret— I think what Lord Shaxx means to say, Ada 1 interrupted, shooting the Titan a razor-sharp glance, is that your prototypes were ahead of market. Their time to shine is now. Can the soft sell, replied the Omolon rep. The numbers are right, so we're in. But what's the catch? The Vice rep asked suspiciously. No catch, Ada 1 steepled her fingers. In a year's time, we'll all be dead. The reps shifted uncomfortably. Or we'll have defeated the Witness, she continued. In either case, it's time to diversify our offerings, with newly released designs, and more. The Vice rep arched her eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Ada's tone warmed slightly. Just an idea. There's an old Cosmodrome program whose revival, I think, could be quite useful. So Vice and Omolon reps there agreed to reproduce their infamous weapons, but what is Ada 1 talking about at the end there? Well, that begs the question, what is in the Cosmodrome? In my mind, there are a few key possibilities, with one that I'm going to talk about a bit more in depth because it really excites me. Yes, it's definitely something you've heard me talk about at great length before. Yes, it's one of the community's favorite things to talk about. But I think the first of these possibilities that Ada is referring to is just the old Warmind bunkers. This is a reasonable idea given that they're full of valuable technology that is now dormant thanks to Rasputin's passing. Ikelos weapon technology being produced by foundries would create a most powerful edge and would mean new profitable ventures for those foundries. And after all, the Cosmodrome is nearby and absolutely chock full of it. So, yeah, it might be time to raid the Seraphim Vault down beneath in the Cosmodrome. That's just one possibility though, because there's also another prominent project that is not exactly so subterranean that's also housed in the Baikonur Cosmodrome, and that's the Exodus program, in particular, the colony vessels. This is a good contextual fit for what Ada 1 is talking about. Either we'll all be dead or we'll have new ventures where we need to expand to. Either way, we need to look into this. This could be Ada suggesting that we reactivate some of the Exodus program ships to escape the Witness. And if this is what Ada's talking about, then it does actually make sense. Whilst there were Exodus vessels, such as Exodus Black, Exodus Indigo, Exodus Yellow, and Exodus Green, that did depart from the Cosmodrome and made it to the outer system, there are others that just never managed to launch in time. Exodus Blue, for example, is only halfway through its construction, and has been visited so many times by Guardians that Shaxx turned it into a Crucible arena, or at least, it's nearby to the Exodus Blue. And Exodus Red, well, it's still sitting in its gantry, still waiting to be launched. Granted, you would have to remove all of the different cryopods who've now probably just contained corpses for hundreds of years, but still, it's ready to launch and it's on a platform. You could indeed use these vessels if you saw fit. And if there was a great effort, perhaps something that only the foundries could do, then maybe it would be possible for humanity to push out into the stars and expand their civilization, or save it entirely, if escaping the Witness was a possibility. But this still might not be what Ada's talking about. I think it's worth remembering too that the Lost Array resides within the Cosmodrome. The Lost Array is one of the oldest Destiny 1 missions and is actually remembered quite fondly. It's where you basically set up a massive radar dish that beams Rasputin's signal out to the rest of the system. Now the Warmind is still dead, but a massive communications array that has been created within the Cosmodrome is now potentially kind of valuable. If it can be re-established, then it can be a hub for transmitting data from the Reef or even from Neomuna. And if that's the case, maybe the Lost City can make use of it. I don't know why this would be particularly special versus the typical equipment you'd find in the city, but then again, this was used to transmit Warmind code, so maybe it's about taking control of some other remnant weapons that are remaining in orbit somewhere around the system. But I think that there is something which trumps all of these. Let's look a little deeper in the Cosmodrome, and in particular, let's look a little more to the northeast. Because whenever the Cosmodrome is mentioned, everyone thinks of the Cosmodrome they enter now, but everyone is very quick to forget that the northeastern section of the Cosmodrome has been sealed off for quite some time. And it's not just known as the Cosmodrome, it goes by an entirely different name: the Plaguelands. It's called this because of the passing of the Iron Lords who fell at the hands of the Siva Plague unleashed by Rasputin. The Warmind unleashed a weapon upon them that utterly destroyed them and left only 2 Iron Lords alive, a weapon that isn't truly a weapon, because it could honestly be anything and everything, and that weapon was Siva. I think this might be what Ada 1 is referring to. But for those of you not in the know, what is Siva? Really briefly, Siva is a complex system of nanites that work in concert to create and build things. They can be commanded by a singular mind, and previously were commanded by the Warmind Rasputin. Siva is a technology capable of remarkable things. It can construct entire cities in a minuscule amount of time. It can create complex electronical and mechanical systems, and it can even be used to fabricate weapons in a span of time that might seem like a blink of an eye. Siva is capable of converting its surrounding matter into more of itself, allowing it to quickly make use of resources nearby in order to complete the task as desired. Siva is a Golden Age technology that changed the fate of humanity during the Golden Age. It was perhaps as instrumental to the growth of humanity as the Traveler was. When the Neomuni settled on Neptune, they had some Siva, and the basis of that technology combined with Vex tech is what gives them their more advanced nanite fluid that they use today, the same fluid found in Quicksilver Storm, the same fluid that means that they will be able to perpetually rebuild their city. It's a remarkable technology, even as a base foundation. And now that Rasputin is dead, if I was asked what the most valuable thing in the Cosmodrome was, it would previously have been Rasputin's bunkers and the Warmind complex. But now, it's not that. It's whatever's left of Site 6, where the Siva was created. And, with that in mind, it's also the remains of the place which Axis, the Archon Prime, an Elixni who was overtaken by Siva and turned into a machine, briefly held court, a place known as the Perfection Complex. These are now, in my mind, the most important locations in the Cosmodrome when it comes to this conversation. They may hold the vestiges of a technology that could kickstart humanity's future if used correctly. It was such an enticing technology that back in the day the Iron Lords thought that it was worth going after in force. This is why all of them descended on the Plaguelands. This is why they tried to find it for themselves. Their goal was to rebuild the Golden Age, and the Warmind stopped them. Now though, the Warmind is dead, and so there are 2 possibilities. Either the Siva is repeating its previously issued commands over and over for infinity, or Siva is dormant, and if that's so, all Siva needs is a new commanding voice to bring it to bear. I think Ada 1 isn't just sitting there and believing that this could be an opportunity. I believe she feels, with her unique construction as one of the few remnants of Project Niobe, that she might be that voice. We'll have to wait and see regardless. The Lost City's defensive needs to be, well, seen to its conclusion, and it must be the priority for now. All Guardians need to do is hold the line. We can save the grand plans for human revival for another day when the Black Fleet no longer hangs in our sky, and when the threat of annihilation no longer hangs over our heads like a sword of Damocles. But I still think Ada 1 is right to think of the future, because this will be, ultimately, a great conflict and a great tragedy no matter whether we win or lose. Humanity has been put to the edge of extinction. And with tragedy comes opportunity. Opportunities can be exploited by more parties than one. I think that now this is going to be a race. I think Ada 1 and the Foundries must secure the Siva as quickly as possible, and it must be brought into the use of the Last City, because there are others out there who might make use of it. And it's something we've seen before. The Fallen of the House of Devils had their sect of splicers take control of the Siva during Rise of Iron, and it nearly brought the city to its knees. Axis the Archon Prime claimed to have ascended into godhood by becoming a machine, and was willing and actively trying to pull all the other Fallen houses to its banner so that they might swear fealty. This was all possible because of the power of Siva, and it was nearly enough to the point where Axis had built siege engines with the intent of destroying the last city's walls. This was the entire point of our raid in Wrath of the Machine, the raid that we still haven't had transferred from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, and it was all possible because the Fallen Splicers of the House of Devils acquired Siva. That is the power of Siva, that is the danger that it presents, and that is why we need to think about securing it. But that's a conversation for another day. Like I said, we need to defend the lost city first, otherwise none of this will matter. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like, and leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. Is there something I'm not thinking about in the Cosmodrome? Is there something that can be found within the vast complexes or tunnels deep beneath the surface that maybe is more important than Siva? Is there something else that I'm missing entirely? Let me know what you think. And of course, if you want more Destiny content leading up to the final shape, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Per Audacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.